A couple days ago, guys, I reluctantly watched Blue Beetle. I was with some family, the movie came on, and I thought to myself, you know what? We'll just give it a shot. We'll see what happens. We'll see how I feel. Oh boy. There is a reason why I've chosen not to watch DC movies after Shazam: Fury of the Gods. This movie reminded me why I've stopped. This isn't going to be so much of a review video for Blue Beetle, as it's going to be more so why I think this movie failed and why Warner Brothers seems to constantly fall in the same trap, and why I think they're just going to continue to do so even heading into the DCU. Now, if you enjoyed this movie, all power to you. Keep enjoying it, but you might want to stop watching this video because you're probably going to really dislike me by the end of it. I really did not like this film in any way. I'll just give you my review for it right now. I gave it a 2 out of 10. And I think there's two very clear and evident reasons why. One, I'm sick and tired of seeing the same type of superhero films over and over and over again. And I just genuinely thought this was a really bad movie. This movie essentially check marks all the classical, overplayed, boring, and annoying superhero film tropes in the book. So first and foremost, I think the question that needs to be asked, it needs to be apparent, is who is Blue Beetle? Simple as that. Yeah, I know who he is. All of you watching me probably know who he is. Any comic book fan knows who he is. Marvel fans, or Marvel's comic book fans, know who Blue Beetle is, because if you are in the world of comic books, you're kind of well versed in everything. But to the majority of the population, who is Blue Beetle? A, no one knows, and B, I don't really think anybody cares. Yeah, making a Blue Beetle movie is an interesting move, considering this helps you get to know different characters. This helps different characters have opportunity outside of comic books, so general audiences can care about other characters besides a Batman or a Superman. But the problem with this is you haven't earned the trust of the fans, and this is being made and distributed by a company in Warner Brothers who has a horrible, horrendous, terrible, awful reputation. Nobody cares about what they do and the movies they make, so how could you ever expect anyone to care about Blue Beetle? And the numbers speak for itself. 130 million in the box office, nobody cared. In a world where maybe DC had the popularity the way Marvel did in the film realm, okay, that's a different situation. You could get away with a Blue Beetle. But in their climate, not gonna happen. Not gonna work. And also, I feel like we've already discussed this many times on this channel, but I'm gonna say it again. It's the MCU formula just reskinned with DC characters. That is what Blue Beetle was. All I saw was a Marvel movie just with a DC character copy and pasted as the main character. Aquaman has done this process, Shazam has repeated this process, and even though there have been darker DC movies, darker in the sense of a little more vulgar and a little more gory, they still follow a specific trend of the Marvel Cinematic Universe formula, and Blue Beetle does exactly that. By chasing the success of Marvel, they keep trying to copy Marvel, and they are clearly too dumb to understand that's not what's going to make them popular again. It's actually by going opposite and trying something completely new and something very interesting, not just to attract your comic book fans, but to attract the general audience, in which they've lost 90% of them, if not more. So going into all of the tropes that this movie had, I have to start off by saying I was on my phone for 50, 60, maybe even 70% of this movie. If I happened to find myself in a situation where I went to the theaters for this film, I probably would have walked out. And I've never walked out of a film before. So first thing I'll say is I feel as if the Fast and Furious franchise threw up all over a DC movie. Family this, family that, family's important. Family can help you in the good times and the bad times. Family is the only thing that matters. Family is the only thing that can get you up on your feet and make you continue to fight. Vin Diesel and probably the cast and crew of all Fast and Furious films would be very proud of their spin-off movie Blue Beetle. I think you actually could have used Blue Beetle as the marketing for Fast and Furious 10. That way Fast and Furious 10 probably would have made a lot more money in the box office. As a gift in good faith, I would even potentially donate the little amount of money you made from Blue Beetle over to the Fast franchise so they can just keep on making their movies. This is probably one of the most obnoxious films I've ever watched in my life. There is so much yelling, there is so much screaming, the family is so annoying. There are so many times where I was sitting there looking around at everyone and everyone looking at me being like, what the hell's going on in this movie? It's hard to follow along. It's hard to even really understand what one person says over another person because of how much screaming and yelling there is. It's just one big headache. They say they want a Latino representation. They want a main character who's a Latino. They want a Latino family, but they couldn't have made it more stereotypical. Well, a lot of people talk about how good Zolo was in the role. I gotta be honest with you, he's not terrible, but I don't think he's great in any way. I also thought he himself was a little annoying. He only has like 1 or 2 different emotions in the film. If he's not hyperventilating and stressing out, he's screaming or yelling at someone. That's all he does. And speaking of stereotypes, how about character stereotypes? Every single one of these movies nowadays always seems as if it needs some sort of character who's a tinkerer, who just happens coincidentally to be very good at a specific thing that needs to be done in the film. This particular tinkerer is always so conveniently good at something that the hero needs done that it always makes the hero question, how are you so good at this stuff? And how do you know to do this stuff? And this tinkerer always happens to just randomly know how to use alien technology or a billion-dollar corporation's high-end manufacturing. That character is George Lopez. He plays the character who's just really good with technology. He likes to get his hands dirty, down with these evil and greedy corporations. There's always one of them. And I think George Lopez is a pretty cool guy, but once again, my God, obnoxious to the max. He might even be the worst of them all. Then there's always that character who's sweet, really innocent, but deep down, they got a dark side. Or they know how to do a lot more than you could have ever expected this sweet person to know. That is the grandmother in this movie. They had this woman walking around with an alien tech Gatling gun, taking out highly trained soldiers as if she does this on a daily basis. There's always that one character who just randomly, for comedic effect, happens to be more than meets the eye and has this really deep history of being more. Then you have the quirky female character, because every single one of these films has to have one now, and that happens to be Blue Beetle's sister. There's always that one character that has to make the cringe jokes, or someone has to keep you in line, right? All the time. There's another stereotypical character, and here's another one of those really crappy superhero tropes. How about the villains? Susan Sarandon, a really great actress, was handed a terrible script, terrible dialogue. It's always these I'm really rich and I want more money and power and I'm gonna develop weapons to the highest bidder. Ha 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 ha, I'm so evil. OMAC basically being able to do exactly what Blue Beetle can, and they don't even get into the details of what OMAC really is, and they don't even get into the details of the villain himself. They don't do any characterization at all. But what always has to happen, right, is that villain in their final moments always has to open their eyes and realize that what they've been doing is just the wrong thing. They always choose to help the hero. Get out of here, kid. I'll handle this. It's not until those final moments where you actually get to understand who the villain is. And by this point, I don't even care because I know he's gonna die. And while Blue Beetle fights the main villain at the end of the movie and just has one piece of dialogue, which probably just says continue screaming while fighting, the family's also fighting these highly trained soldiers from $1 billion corporation and beating them. Shazam did this trope where while Captain Marvel was trying to defeat the villain, the family with no powers had to mount unicorns and fight these demon hellish creatures. Black Adam did this while Black Adam was fighting Sabak and all the regular people were fighting demons and zombies. I'm pretty sure somewhere out there's a multitude of Marvel movies that probably have done this as well. Why is that a thing? And I'm starting to think that I need someone who does like that trope to explain to me why it's so interesting to do something like that. And on the topic of more family, it's always that trope of the main character getting these powers where they all of a sudden feel as if they don't deserve it because they don't have what it takes. And it's always that one character or the family itself that picks them up on their feet and says, you can do this. And all of a sudden, they have all the courage in the world and they're capable of taking the fight to the villain and winning in the end of it. Happens all the time. You know, there's so many other tropes I noticed about this film. The love-struck boy who just has to save the damsel or the rich damsel in distress. The protagonist and the love interest have a kiss scene, but just before they actually kiss, there's always that one character who pops in and goes, oh, am I interrupting something? There's always your typical 80s or 90s rock song that plays during a fight scene. And you know how these movies are gonna end. The movie is going to end the way it began. Basically back to normal with barely any consequences. And you could say to me, oh, well, Tyrell, his dad died in the movie. That's really hard on him and his family. Yeah, the one member of his family died who seemed to have the least screen time of all the family members in the movie. And it's not hard to feel emotion for some of that type of stuff when you see it happening, because sometimes you can just tell something like that is going to happen. It's hard to feel emotion for that type of stuff in film when you've seen it happen in movies exactly like this over and over and over and over again. And it's exactly that. I've seen this movie before. I truly have. So many previous DC films, so many previous Marvel movies, I've seen this movie before, just with a different main character. This, in a way, was DC's lower budget Ant-Man. It pretty much follows that movie beat by beat. Or in a way, this is like an Iron Man and a Spider-Man kind of meshed together for kids. This movie was not made for theaters. It should have stuck to streaming services, because I guarantee you it actually lost money by them pushing it into the theaters. And not only should it have gone to any ordinary streaming service, this probably would have done best on Disney+. Its dialogue and its acting feels as if it would come from TV shows on family TV. Everything I just mentioned there and more is exactly why this movie didn't work, and I think why people did not care. And of course, there are so many other things in this film that didn't work for me and probably didn't work for other people, and there are so many other reasons why DC just keeps on failing. But this movie should have never been their answer to 6 financial flops in a row, with this film becoming their 7th. More often than not, people speak with their wallets, and that's what a lot of us are doing right now. And we're telling this corporation, we're telling this company, this is not what we want. Those storylines, the way you craft those movies, it's played out, it's old, it's boring, it's generic. We want something new. We want something different. We want something fresh. I can't help but notice that if Blue Beetle is going to be part of this DC cinematic universe, this is just a sign that that's what the future of the DCU will look like, or a big piece of the DCU will look like this. And I don't think that's a good start. If you want to regain the fans you have lost, if you want to attract new fans, if you want to bring in comic book lovers from every direction, if you want to bring back the general audiences, unfortunately, this is not how you do it, and this isn't the movie to do it with. I am sick of these types of movies, and the more DC makes these really stupid decisions, it sours my interest on an incoming DC connected universe. It's to the point where the only thing I'm excited for DC in film is their Elseworld stories. Batman, Joker, and whatever else they might want to dabble their hand in Elseworlds, if they're ever going to even do any more. Look, I know what I'm saying here is going to attract to a certain amount of people who are like, yes, Tyrell, keep talking that shit. There are going to be other people who are going to look at me and say, screw you, I hate this guy, blah, blah, blah. I understand you're not gonna really like me if you like this movie. It is what it is. I'm just expressing my opinions on what I noticed from this film and why I think Blue Beetle did not succeed for DC and why it was a bad move bringing it to theaters. And I'm just expressing some really clear problems that Warner Brothers and DC continues to exhibit. Will DC ever get better than this? I'm not sure, but a lot of signs point to the answer being no. They have a super small sliver margin of error here. And I think we're going to really see what is going to start to happen to DC and Warner Brothers after the release of Aquaman 2. Now, let me know in the comments down below what you thought of the Blue Beetle film, and also let me know how you think Blue Beetle's failure is going to reflect on DC and Warner Brothers moving forward. But that is all I have for you on this one, everyone. So until next time, I will talk to you all very soon.